Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman, and our next guest, Josef Messer, president of Catering by Andrew. Welcome to Radio Entrepreneurs.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having us.
Well, pleasure to have you on. So you've got an interesting story. You have been with Catering by Andrew for a number of years and sort of worked your way, as they say, from the bottom up. You want to tell us a little bit about the company and about your journey?
Sure. So Catering by Andrew, we've been in business just about 40 years now. The catering business actually started, Andrew's father had a restaurant in Brookline called Cafe Shalom. And it was a dairy restaurant on Harvard Street when there was really no kosher restaurants in Boston. And as he said, he had to do a lot of education to teach his clients how to order in a restaurant, how to tip the waiters in a restaurant. And, all of it, Andrew and his siblings, they all worked in the restaurant as kids and teenagers.
So a true family affair from the get-go.
It was a family affair. Marvin, Andrew's father, and Claire, worked in the restaurant. And they employed a lot of local, teenagers and high school kids throughout the restaurant's operation. At some point, Andrew was finishing high school. He went off to Johnson and Wales, where he learned a lot about catering and culinary, ended up going to the Waldorf Hotel in New York to do some time there in their catering department. And when he came back, the restaurant started to take a shift and do more catering. People asked us in the beginning to do kiddishes, like a luncheon after a service or small parties. At that time, they were working out of the Holiday Inn kitchen, actually on Beacon Street in Brookline. And Andrew can remember the first time somebody was like, "Oh, can you cater a wedding?" They didn't have the staff, they didn't have the equipment, but sure, we'll get it done, right? And that's always been the motto of Catering by Andrew of, we're going to get it done, we're going to make it happen. I joined Catering by Andrew just about 15 years ago. Andrew was looking for a staffing manager. I think at the time they called the position director of service. So I interviewed, I really didn't know him except, hearing his name in the community, and came in, ran staffing, helped with events. Over time, as different people left the business for various reasons, I moved into a role of general manager, helping with sales. And then 2020, COVID comes, and we're like, what are we going to do, right? There was no catering. There was no parties.
No events to be had.
There were no events to be had, exactly.
Hard to cater virtual events, right?
So we did some. It was really interesting. I'll never forget, the JCC had a virtual gala. They had some people that had like a drive-in movie theater almost. Mm-hmm. And we packed boxes and went to their cars. For other people, we delivered little boxes of gala food to their houses around Brookline, Newton, and beyond. But, we really survived COVID. We had a very strong retail presence. And when people in markets couldn't get fish or flour or staple items, we were there for them. And Thursdays, we would pack up. That first week, we sold like 500 pounds of bread flour. And we're literally sitting packing, bulk flour in 5-pound bags and sending it out. And we did that for almost a year and a half of a really strong retail till catering came back.
So a true pivot. You guys pivoted with what the market
it was really a true pivot, and it took, apart from everybody, from Andrew's family coming back into work, right? His kids were all there helping. The staff, which, were catering. We had wait staff that were coming in to help pack flour and help to pack raw fish and deliveries. And, we really did a variety of work. That first year, if you remember, COVID fell in March. Passover was 4 weeks later. So there were families that had literally never made Passover before. Imagine, you always take your family on a Passover program, and suddenly somebody's like, oh no, now you have to make Passover. Well, they don't have dishes. They don't have the kosher pots and pans for Passover. Our Passover business is typically 200 to 300 orders. That year we did 550 orders. Working around the clock to get it done, plus CJP, the philanthropy did, takeout boxes for seniors. We did 3,000 of those. So we really
I'm sure you guys were thinking a lot of, and it came to pass at midnight.
Correct.
Probably a lot of midnight shifts, right?
Midnight came and passed. But we really did a lot of work for the community, and it's kind of what kept us going. And the community was incredibly appreciative of everything we did. They didn't take it for granted, which was really lovely. And the amount of letters and goodwill that we had was really remarkable. But we get out of COVID and, the sales team shifted. People left for various reasons. The operations team shifted. And, I really took on a stronger role as general manager of the whole operation. We get brought in a new executive chef at that point that had worked for us previously to run the kitchen, but a lot of different changes in operations and in sales. And then last year, we were very excited. Andrew was looking to move the company forward. He wanted to take a step back. And we ended up being acquired by Gourmet Caterers. So people might know Gourmet from some of their exclusive venues in and around Boston, Moakley Courthouse, JFK Library, the Artists for Humanity. And we felt Gourmet was the right fit for us. It was a family-owned business, still is a family-owned business by the Wiggins family. And, they do a lot of charitable work for different organizations, similar to what we do. Andrew felt that it was a great fit for us.
So is it a good complementary fit for you guys? I mean, you don't service the same clients, but you service similar clients or similar types of, or the operation's completely separate?
So the kitchen operation is largely separate, right? We've maintained our kosher status with the KVH, right, under Rabbi Kaufman. We've maintained our own identity, keeping the same logos. We added the word gourmet, but everything else is the same. So we're Gourmet Catering by Andrew. The real efficiency and the advantages that Gourmet brought to us was more in, I would say, the back end. So our accounting, our human resource department, ability for trucks and logistics, where, I can think of in a particular weekend in March, we had 8 different events going on around the city. We never would have been able to take on that much work previously, but because of the strength of Gourmet and their different, management teams and operations teams, we were able to make 8 great events for clients, all very successfully. So in that sense, the growth opportunity has really been very abundant, and it's been great.
So what has it been like for you coming into a family-owned business? You've risen through the ranks, you've taken over control of the day-to-day, and then to have an acquisition. Tell us a little bit about your journey and what that's felt like.
Yeah, it's really very interesting. When I asked one of the owners, I said, what's going to be my new role in the company? They said, well, it's going to be the same as what you did before. And largely that's true, right? My day-to-day interactions with clients, with staff, that really hasn't changed. It's grown, but there certainly is, more in reporting and financials and budgeting, right? Understanding the business that we run. And also, to your point before, while we do the same thing, right? We're both caterers. We both make great events for clients. There is some uniqueness to kosher and Jewish events that Gourmet, and non-kosher events doesn't have, right? You talk to anybody who's going to a Jewish wedding, what do they look forward to? The cocktail hour, right? How many stations are they going to have? Is there going to be charcuterie? Is there going to be 3 different kinds of smoked meats? Is there going to be, a sushi bar? You go to
cocktail
non-kosher.
Hot dogs.
Right, the cocktail hot dogs.
Take it back to your bar mitzvah, right?
Exactly, right? And not to say that, other events outside of the kosher world don't do that, but there's such an emphasis on food. That's been one of the biggest, things that we look at. And people are always amazed of how much food we send. And we've had clients even that have asked, oh, now that, it's not Andrew, is it going to be the same? Will I still have that level of abundance? And the easy answer is yes, right? Our core value of catering and creating memorable experiences, that's not changing, right?
Keep them well fed.
Exactly.
As our moms used to say, right? A fed child's a happy child. Tell us a little bit about, since the company's been around, Catering by Andrew and Gourmet. I know you have a culinary background, but is innovation important? We talked a lot about sort of the feel-good food from our growing up. How do you marry that with relevance today and keeping it fresh, et cetera?
Yeah, it's really a very interesting question for a multitude of reasons. Number one, right? The biggest challenge in catering today is this, right? Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody's on Pinterest and Googling and looking up, what's the newest, latest restaurant culinary creation. And what people often don't understand is you go to some of the best kosher restaurants in New York or Miami or now Lakewood, what they can provide on a plate for 30 covers a night or 200 covers a night doesn't necessarily apply to a catering event for 300.
Not everything can scale.
Not everything can scale. And not everything is meant to scale. So it's really a unique challenge. Also, if you looked at the clients of Catering by Andrew, right? Probably years ago, you had two sets of clients. You had strictly kosher, right? Orthodox clientele, that there was not so many kosher restaurants out there in Boston or even outside. So you put a beautiful piece of prime rib on a plate Friday night with wonderful roasted potatoes and baby vegetables. And there was a real wow factor to it because they didn't get it. As that clientele has become more foodies and there's more access to really great, wonderful kosher food and wines, that simplicity, while delicious, doesn't really cut it anymore. They're looking for what's going to be even better than what they've had in the past. The second subset of clients we have are, what I would say is old school conservadox, where we keep kosher at home. Maybe we eat out dairy, fish, not kosher. But if we're going to make a wedding, we're going to make a Jewish simcha celebration for our children, for our family community. They want it to be kosher, right? And that group is certainly used to the best of eating out, the best restaurants. One of the things Andrew always said about Catering by Andrew, and we've, really carry it through to today, is if the option in Boston for a lot of clients was mediocre kosher, or going not kosher and having dairy or fish, they would probably go the not kosher route, right? As opposed to mediocre kosher catering. So when we look at who we compare ourselves to, without using names, Andrew's looking of who are the top non-kosher caterers in Boston, and how do we maintain the same level or better than what they're doing? And, we instill that in the staff, right? Team that's cutting fruit in the morning, they're tasting the fruit. Wow. Is the fruit ripe? Is the fruit ripe? Is it fresh? Does it look good? Is it going to hold up till tomorrow when it's being served? If any of those answers, the answer is no, then wow, we have to call the purveyor. We have to bring something else. Or, you know what? The fruit platters aren't going to have grapes today because the grapes are lousy. We're going to put more strawberries, right? And we do that with fish. We do it with all our different products to ensure that everything that we're serving is the best quality.
So continually monitoring and making sure that the stuff is up to par and
Right.
in line with your reputation of
Right.
quality.
We had a client very recently who called me up and they're planning a bar mitzvah for their kid. And he goes, when people ask why I always use Catering by Andrew, it's a little more money than some of the others. He goes, when you hire Catering by Andrew, you're hiring an insurance policy. And you know that you'll pay a little more, but you're never going to have a bad event. That between the staff, Andrew, everybody behind us, we always make sure that we have the best possible, product, service, and, level of attention that each party deserves.
Well, that says a lot about how you approach the business, and probably speaks to why the businesses continue to be successful through generations and through many years. Joseph, if people want to reach out to you, want to talk more about either the company or opportunities, parties that they may, or events they may have coming up, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Sure. So our website is cateringbyandrew.com. They can always send an inquiry through the website. Our phone number is there. I can give it to you as well to share with the listeners, is 617-731-6585. And, we always welcome people to come in if they're planning events. They just want to talk about ideas and brainstorming. We're always open to talking and learning more about the individual needs of clients.
And probably a little sampling, a little nosh couldn't hurt either, right?
It never hurts.
Excellent.
It never hurts.
Our guest has been Josef Messer, president of Catering by Andrew. It's been a pleasure having you on Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
And we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.